What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA. Today I wanted to talk about an article that came across my inbox here that I think is super interesting, has potentially big implications for the music industry as a whole. Before I get into that, I want to ask you guys, what do you think about this format? I really like it for these kind of quick news analysis type videos, and it definitely enables me to crank these out a lot faster, which is a good thing for me. And a good thing for you because it means you get more videos. So let me know what you guys think about this kind of lo-fi format. Tell me if it works for you, if you want to see more stuff like this, because if you do, that would be awesome. I love doing this news analysis type stuff, and doing it in this kind of a lightweight format makes it way easier for me. So here is the article from the New York Times. So let me know in the comments what you think of this. And here is the article from the New York Times. A new Spotify initiative makes the big record labels nervous. So here is Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify. And essentially, here's the deal. Spotify is doing direct licensing deals with a number of independent artists here. So as it says here, for decades, the path to stardom in the music industry has usually gone through a major record company. Almost every artist today who reaches the top of the charts, whether Kanye or Adele, Beyonce or Drake, has gotten there with help from one of three conglomerates that control around 80% of the business: Universal, Sony, and Warner. Now, you could plug in, instead of Kanye, Adele, Beyonce, and Drake, you could plug in, artists from our world in there. You could plug in, Periphery and Lamb of God and, Bring Me the Horizon, whatever names you want there. And instead of Universal, Sony, and Warner, you would plug in like Metal Blade, Rise, Nuclear Blast, whatever. You get the idea. The point is that, even as streaming and other things have become more important, labels have definitely been key to breaking most of the big artists. Now, Spotify is experimenting with another approach, one that is making these labels nervous. Over the last year, the 12-year-old company has quietly, by the way, 12 years old, I forgot that the company is that old, because Spotify came out in the US, I think, in 2011, I believe, and I subscribed immediately, but I forgot that it's 12 years old. That just goes to show that so many of these companies or bands or anything that you think was like an overnight success probably was going on for a lot longer than you think. Anyway, over the last year, the 12-year-old company has quietly struck direct licensing deals with a small number of independent artists. The deals give these artists a way onto the streaming platform and a closer relationship to the company, an advantage when pitching music for its influential playlists while bypassing the major labels altogether. Although the deals are modest, with advance payments of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, according to several people involved, the big record companies see the Spotify initiative as a potential threat. A small step that down the line could reshape the music business as it has existed since the days of the Victrola. So a couple things that I wanted to unpack here. First of all, you can already get onto Spotify without going through a label. You can use something like, TuneCore or CD Baby or DistroKid. You can already get onto Spotify on your own. So that's not new. But what is new is the part here that a closer relationship to the company, an advantage when pitching music for its influential playlists. That's the part that is kind of, I think, new here, if I understand the article correctly. So although you could already get onto Spotify as an independent artist, getting them to notice you would be the harder part. And so that I think is what's happening here, because Spotify has struck a licensing deal with these artists, then they're of course going to invest more of their time and resources into promoting that artist, such as pitching music for its influential playlists. So that's another thing I wanted to kind of highlight here is, as I talked about in I think one of my other videos, although Apple Music is bigger than Spotify in terms of US subscribers, I'm not sure globally, but they are bigger in the US now. For sure, Spotify has an advantage in cultural capital, like its influential playlists. I don't doubt that a lot of people listen to the Apple Music playlist, but definitely Spotify's playlists are the most influential. Like if they can break an artist or give a huge advantage to an artist, like they're a big deal in a way that Apple Music is not. So I think that is Spotify's key advantage, is the fact that they have that cultural capital. And if you are one of these artists that they have struck a deal with, then you're more likely to end up on one of those playlists. That's a big deal, because what it does is replace one of the functions of a label, which is essentially to be the marketing department for your album. Because one of the main things a label would do is help get you on one of these playlists, right? But if you already have a deal with Spotify, if they've already agreed to put your shit on their playlist, then, that really removes a huge part of what the label would do for you. The other part that the label does for you, among other things, but the other big thing a label would do for you is paying for the production of the album. And as I've talked about before, and as a lot of you guys probably know, because a lot of you are probably producers, it is easier and cheaper than ever before to produce an album, depending on the genre. If you're in a metal band, or hardcore, metalcore, whatever, there's really no reason why you couldn't produce a very good album for $5,000, I would say, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, depending on what you want to do. An EP, for sure, you could do a great EP for a couple grand, no problem. So in the past, when it cost $100,000 to record an album, you needed a label to come up with that money to invest in you. But if it only costs a couple $1,000s to produce an album or an EP, well, if you've got 4 or 5 people in the band, you can probably come up with that amount of money, especially if, as it says here, Spotify is willing to give you a little bit of an advance, because, you would use that advance of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for the production. So that's a big deal, because if they've taken care of the marketing part here, and if they've taken care of the production part here, that is a big, big threat to a label. Like, what does a label then do for you? The other thing they might do is pitch you to radio, but that's increasingly less relevant, especially, in like metalcore or something, metalcore, whatever. So just kind of goes on here. It has not revealed which artists it made deals with and declined to comment for this article. So we don't know exactly who these people are or what the deal points were, but they do go into a little bit of detail here. Spotify has paid advances to management firms and other companies that represent artists who are not signed to a record label. So there is still a manager involved in this case. It's not directly with the artist, but I think that will probably change too, especially if you're talking about, someone like, say, Periphery or Dillinger Escape Plan, where they are, very hands-on with. So I've talked before about how valuable it can be to take care of your business yourself. Like, if you want a greater share of the revenue, do the shit yourself. This is a great example of that. What if you now have a direct deal between you, the artist, if you're self-managed, and Spotify? You get 100% of the money. That's a big deal. So for now, that means up-and-coming acts and older artists who have gained control over their vintage hits. So, Dillinger would be a case of the older artists who have gained control over their vintage hits. So Spotify is offering artists 2 advantages: a bigger financial cut and ownership of the recording. The deals, furthermore, are not exclusive, leaving the artists free to license their songs to other streaming companies like Apple Music and Amazon. So that's a huge deal. The fact that they do not, that these are not exclusive deals is massive, and they don't own, and they don't want ownership of the recordings. That's a huge reason to go with Spotify, because you guys have all heard these nightmare stories about some artist that was locked into a deal with a label that they didn't like, and they signed a publishing deal where the label, gave them some tiny advance and then fucked them on the back end. You've heard all these stories, and that is not going to be the case with Spotify, because you will own your masters, and you can take those to Apple Music or Amazon or license them to a commercial or a movie. You can do whatever you want with it, because Spotify doesn't want to be a label. They don't care about owning the master. They're not interested in being a label or a publishing company. What they want is to cut out the labels, because Spotify's problem, as I talked about in my other video, Spotify's problem, and this is kind of a mistake on the part of the labels, Spotify's problem is that they have to pay, which it talks about here, they have to pay the labels a percentage of, a large percentage of their revenue. I think it's 70 or 80% of the revenue goes to labels, which makes it extremely hard for Spotify to ever kind of get out of this hole that they're in of, Spotify loses hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And the problem is because their cost of streaming is a variable cost. So as I said in another video, the way Netflix works, content is a fixed cost. So they paid, for example, I love the show Ozark. They paid whatever it is, $5 million or something for Ozark, and they own it outright. And Whether one person watches Ozark or a billion people watch Ozark, their cost is the same. Now, Spotify is different. For them, content is a variable cost. So if one person listens to, the Periphery album, they pay, whatever, 2 cents. And if a billion people listen to it, their costs go up a billion X, right? So it's a tough thing because as they grow, their costs grow proportionate with their revenue. They can't break out of that cycle as long as they're beholden to the labels like this. So I think the labels kind of fuck themselves here because the labels are playing hardball with Spotify. The labels have basically refused to take less money. They've refused to make any of these kind of deals with Spotify that would enable, that would turn this content into a fixed cost. And so they've kind of forced Spotify's hand. Spotify's kind of like, look, guys, we've tried to play ball, but you guys won't cooperate, so we had no choice but to go around you. And that's basically what they're doing here, even though it says here, he was careful to add that such deals did not mean Spotify was turning into a record company, something that Spotify's contracts with the big labels forbid, according to people briefed on the terms of these contracts. So, they have done whatever they need to do to fulfill the terms of those contracts such that they are now, you say, no, we're not a record label, probably because they don't own the masters. But essentially they are, because what Spotify does is they control the audience because of their playlists. They can surface whatever they want when you log in, like they did with Drake. It was fucking every every place they could possibly surface the Drake album, they did. And they can do that with anybody they want. They control the most valuable resource in the world, which is the audience's attention. And even though they may not technically be a record company, in all, for all intents and purposes, they are. They, legally speaking, I guess they aren't. But, essentially they are when they do this. And so I think this is a really, really big deal. The record labels should be very concerned about this. And, hopefully what this will do is get the labels to play ball, or the labels can fucking go out of business. I don't give a shit. If the labels aren't going to offer more, what they need to do, this is actually a good thing for artists. And here's why. Because what you want is competition. You want to be able to go, you want to have a deal from Spotify over here, and then you want to be able to take that to the label. Where's my hand? You want to be able to say to the label, hey, we've got this offer from Spotify, and then the label will be forced to give you something more valuable than what Spotify is offering. They should say, okay, well, Spotify can put you on this playlist, but we can do this, 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 and this for you that Spotify can't. And then you want, as the artist, you want to be able to play those two offers off of each other, in terms of what they'll do for you, how much money they'll give you, all that stuff. So this is a good thing, and it's also a good thing, I think, for the industry as a whole, because the labels have got to play ball here. They can't try to, they'll kill the whole streaming industry if they keep acting the way they have and refuse to play ball. So there's a way for this to work out in favor of the artists, in favor of, access to audience. I think ultimately this is a really good thing for the industry, because it's kind of gonna make these labels be more innovative than they are, instead of just kind of sit in the middle and collect royalties and all this shit. So there you go. That is my analysis on this new thing from Spotify, where they are making these licensing deals with labels, which, as it says here, is making the big record labels nervous, as it should. I hope it makes them nervous. Competition is a good thing for artists, and it's a good thing for you as the listener. We want everybody to be working their hardest to promote this shit, to sign the best artists, to surface them, to market the fuck out of them. This is exactly what we want. We want competition. So let me know what you guys think of this in the comments, and also let me know what you guys think of this format in the comments. If you like it, I will do a lot more videos like this. I can bang these out super quickly, way faster than doing it in the other format. So let me know what you guys think of this. If you found this interesting, please subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed, or for some odd reason you do not want to subscribe, please like the video, comment, share it with the video, share it with a friend. Anything that you can do to help spread the word would be very much appreciated. And with that, I will sign off for now, but I will see you next time.